here at VMworld 2015. And I've met Rick Vanover before online on a Google Hangout right around the holidays when we were talking about Veeam Endpoint Backup. So Rick, if you could remind us of your title at Veeam.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for having me on. I'm Rick Vanover. I'm a Senior Product Strategy Manager here at Veeam.
Thank you. So just to get up to speed on what's happened since we talked, well, of course, Windows 10 came out. So one thing I noticed is support was rather quick. So when a major new release comes out of Windows 10 from Microsoft or anything else, you tend to have to wait maybe months for a lot of product vendors or backup vendors to be ready for it. With Windows 10, we obviously had the consumer preview quite early, and it was about 10 days right before you were ready. And I think it was your post or Mike's announcing that to the world that you were ready for you were ready with Windows 10 support for Veeam Endpoint Backup. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was 10 days. So basically, we look at the 10 days because that availability date, generally available date of Windows 10 was pretty well known. So our goal was, one, we wanted to prepare people going into it. So we kind of took a different approach. We said, warning, very shocky title, install Veeam Endpoint Backup now before Windows 10 hits, just in case. So before that, we kind of made a very what we call a blitz, a social media blitz through the blogosphere, through Twitter and all that. Try to get people on to Endpoint before it hits. I mean, we have good faith in Windows 10. It's just in case something goes wrong. And then after the availability date, 10 days after, we had Veeam Endpoint Backup 1.1 become available to the public. So it was a very quick turnaround for platform support because there's a huge need for that. But we wanted people to kind of go into it with an image-based backup in case things don't go as expected.
Okay, and in my household, I deployed about 7 different Windows 10 machines. 2 were fresh installs, 5 were upgrades. 1 did not go well, and I had backed up before. So, yeah, it's always good to have a full backup. Just to find for folks when we say bare metal backup, what that means if you're not aware.
So that's like an image-based backup, and in its entirety, that backup could be restored to different hardware. And even with Veeam Endpoint Backup Free, that includes going to a virtual machine. But what we look at an image-based backup, different storage, it's the entire state of that, in this example, Windows 8.1 operating system, all the apps, all the data are sent into a compressed file that is presumably on a different piece of storage. So it could be a USB drive, could be a NAS share at home, could be another local drive. Could be a Veeam repository. A lot of options are included in the free edition.
All right, and if folks remember Windows Home Server or older versions of competitor backup products, often they wouldn't handle EFI BIOSes or things like a Surface 3 here. That's a challenge in that your disk manager in Windows shows a bunch of stuff, recovery partitions or Dell or HP or Lenovo preloads. It got a little more complicated in the last 4 or 5 years. That's basically why you can't just take out backup software from a few years ago and expect it to work. I've also noticed, like you said, you can restore into disparate, totally different hardware these days pretty well. Windows 10 or Windows 8.1 before, it will boot fine generally without a blue screen. So that gives you more flexibility if your laptop outright fails. You have a bare metal backup, it's all the files on it, and you might be able to restore to another machine to have a decent experience, other than maybe a Microsoft Windows activation you have to do or something, right?
Yeah, and that's really a versatile element. Everything from a component failure, which you can't really control, right? But an OS upgrade, you really are presumably going into that knowing that that's going to happen. But the image-based backup can really help you out of both of those problems.
Now, here at VMworld, obviously it's more enterprisey, and a lot of my home lab articles are about preserving my family and friends' memories and hard drives, and whatever happens when they die eventually, I want to be able to recover from that. I also happen to be running a bunch of virtual machines at home under ESXi 6.0. So folks finding this video or seeing articles on my website, TinkerTry.com, will know that this has been a theme for a long time. It could be as simple as a Windows share. So Windows 8.1 or Windows Server 2012 R2, that can be a folder you right-click on and share it, and that could be your backup target. Can you remind people what the other backup targets are? There's a lot of versatility in what Veeam Endpoint Backup Free can back up to.
Yeah, the storage discussion is, generally speaking, it probably can go anywhere you want to go, okay? So with Endpoint Backup, there are the following options. The first option is you can put the backup on a removable drive, like a USB thumb drive that's big enough to hold it, or maybe a large hard drive that's attached to USB. If you have another fixed local disk on the system, you can put it there. For example, if you've got a C drive and then another like large SATA drive that's your D drive, just for backups, you can do that. I do recommend putting the backups outside of a system in case you lose the whole system, that type of thing. But also you can go to like a NAS share. So there's a huge array of network attached storage devices, some of which IT pros at home would use. You can put them there as like a CIFS or an SMB share. And then additionally, you can go to a Veeam backup and replication repository. Now that's our business data center product, and that is where you would put virtual machine backups. And by the way, a Veeam NFR is available pretty much to the public. Just Google search Veeam NFR and you'll find it. And then you can have a 2-socket license to backup at home for free for home labs. But basically that repository is a container, and in the data center world we think it's slightly different. So we've got, again, Windows storage, so a fiber channel or iSCSI LUN or JBOD, D drive, E drive, letter drive, those types of targets would be what we call a Windows path or Windows server. Additionally, we support Linux targets. So if you have an enterprise Linux system, we would SSH to that one and put our data mover there, and it would receive the backup data. And then we also support SMB and CIF shares for the backup repositories in Veeam backup and replication. And then since November of last year, we've gone down a path of integrating with enterprise deduplicating storage systems. Previously, those were only CIFs or NFS targets, but now we have direct API level hooks, and currently we support data domain and exagrids. Chances are you don't have those at home, but if you have a data center footprint, that's a good place maybe for those few VMs or few systems that aren't virtualized, and you want to back up with Veeam Endpoint Backup. You can put those backups in the same repository as the VMs. So to get that deduplication benefit, that's where that would make sense.
All right. So my own use case, for instance, before this trip to VMworld, I had about a terabyte of data that compressed to about 500 gig. So I actually had a hard drive hand-me-down from a laptop. It was pulled out and replaced by an SSD, so I had a 1 terabyte hard drive, 2.5 inch, easy enough to fly with. And unlike Windows Server 2012 R2 Essentials, where you have this database and you can't really take out a single machine's backup, I was able to just simply copy the folder named the name of the machine, very easy to spot, right-click and copy it, paste it over to this D drive I temporarily attached, a 1 terabyte drive that I flew here with, and then I have full DR recovery in my hotel room if something goes wrong. Obviously limited by the speed of the little spindle on that spinning laptop drive, but there's no dedupe going on or anything complicated. So I've found in my own experience, the restores have been going much faster than when I had 10 machines backed up to Windows Server 2012 R2 Essentials. So that had some dedupe benefits or a little bit less use, but in this world where a 6 terabyte Western Digital Red is really not that expensive anymore, some of that kind of went out the window for me backing up about 10 family and friends PCs in my own home. So you also mentioned the repository. So if a lab like mine, I've got virtual machines too, as well as the physical machines. So the repository could be a way I'll consider now that I've built up my ESXi 6 lab to see, do I want to keep that 6 terabyte Western Digital Red backing up everything? Can you give me a little bit of a hint at what my options might be as a V-expert and VCP person who might have access to NFR code, as you hinted, for a second site or getting some of that out of my home?
So even the NFR license, it's fully functional at the Enterprise Plus level, believe it or not. So you can use the backup copy job with our built-in WAN acceleration to move data to another site. You'd have to put Veeam over there and then basically receive it. Specifically, it would actually just be a repository. So you could have that repository and then move it to another site. The removable aspect of USB drives, really popular, even removable drives in the backup and replication product. Endpoint has that built in. If you use the backup and replication product, you can even use tape. Sorry, I cringe when I say that, but there's a lot of options for offsite.
Okay, and then maybe seeding, that concept. So what if you wanted to run it in your mom's basement and you both have decent internet? It'd be possible to get an initial backup and then do some sort of site-to-site, personal family cloud, whatever you want to call it.
Oh yeah, the backup copy job absolutely has seeding and caching built in. So especially when the WAN acceleration is used, it has its own kind of predefined cache of a, we like it to be SSDs or SSD backed, and it's a small amount of storage. The thought is you can get a small amount of good storage easier than you can get more bandwidth. So this cache will help you because it'll warm up to the data profiles on each end and become very efficient. So seeding is an option as well.
Okay, so I got a little into the weeds there. Backing up to two basic questions and concerns that folks have expressed. One is the SQL Server runtime, and the other is the word free at the end. Can you speak to those two topics for a little bit?
Yeah, so the SQL Server runtime, and I get this a lot on Twitter, Paul, of people like, what is up with this ExpressDB stuff and installation of Veeam Endpoint Backup Free? Well, it's really from a programmatic standpoint where our team is very capable of developing with those types of calls. Now, this database isn't used for the change block tracking. It doesn't track the dedupe or compression that might be used. It's really like a schedule and history and an inventory. That's really what we use this database for, and ExpressDB is very light. Now, ExpressDB is a free component type of SQL Server. It's even smaller than SQL Server Express Edition. But I get a lot of times the next question of Veeam Endpoint Backup Free, how long, what's the catch? Well, I can tell you this. As long as Ratmir is the president, this product will always have this functionality. What we have today will always be free. That's right from the top. That's not changing. Sure, we have big plans for Endpoint, of which I can't share, but I just would encourage everyone to watch this space. But it will be free forever. Our goal is to capture the hearts and minds of IT pros with this product.
All right, well, thank you very much for your time, Rick. It was great to meet you, actually for the first time here at VMworld, having been online many times together, and we'll stay tuned. Have a good day.
Cheers.
Thank you.